Welcome back. Another episode here of the Nothing Near Post Show. Gonna do something a little different this week. Don't have to see my ugly mug for the time that we're together here, but put together a few visuals for you. So let's see how this goes. First things first, as always, we're gonna start with line drills. All right. Missed last week's episode due to sales kickoff for my full-time job. We were down in Dallas, Texas, and everything is, in fact, bigger in Texas. We tried two separate barbecue joints in the Deep Ellum neighborhood, Terry Black's upon arrival for lunch, and the Pecan Lodge on our last meal before getting on a flight. And I'm giving the upper hand to the Pecan Lodge. Uh, here, pictured, you're going to see the Pecan Lodge, couple platters in the middle there. Me and three of the fellas shared that before getting on a flight. Wasn't a terrible idea. Wasn't the best idea either. Mac and cheese to die for. You got your giant beef rib. You got your ribs. You got your pulled pork. You got your sausages. You got your brisket. And then that was actually a platter there in the middle on the black tray called the trough. The fellas added some burnt ends, which you can see there on the edge, and a couple sides of mac and cheese coleslaw, and obviously got to have a few rolls. Picture the Pecan Lodge there, bottom left. Terry Black's, I just had a chopped brisket sandwich, but I don't know if you can compare it apples to apples, but I'm still a Pecan Lodge guy. Why do I lean Pecan Lodge? Not only the food, but above all else, always support local over a chain every day of the week. Also hit up the Dallas Stars game. Shout out to Justice for the hookup on the tickets there, and Chef for joining us. But we got to sit second row behind the Stars bench, and even caught a puck from Coach Pete DeBoer. He tossed it over the glass, and I mossed the guys in the first row. And before you get all bent out of shape, they weren't kids; they were grown men, and they were there on a work outing just like we were. So there actually wasn't a single kid in my vicinity to gift the puck to. So don't get all bent out of shape. Don't call me the bad guy for not giving it to a child. I mossed a bunch of grown ass men in the first row. So sick game. Stars won 4-3 on a goal from Thomas Harley with 4 seconds left in the game. Harley is, of course, a Syracuse native, upstate. Let's bookmark this, upstate, as you can see there on the right side of the screen. And one comment on American Airlines Arena, where the Stars and the Mavs currently play. It gave me shopping mall vibes in the concourse. You know, it wasn't good or bad. It was just different and weird for a guy who's been going to TD Garden for the last 7 years. Again, not a bad thing, just shopping mall vibes. Um, yeah, it was. I don't know how else to explain it. But traveled home on Thursday after this Pecan Lodge meal. Uh, Figuratively, I was battered and bruised, quite honestly. But after the workday Friday, we jumped in the car and pointed the bow due west for a trip to upstate. Friday night, my hometown in central New York, the beautiful Mohawk Valley. Dinner was a Utica staple, pizza and Utica greens. And we watched actually another CNY staple, the Colgate Raiders women's ice hockey team, who beat the St. Lawrence Larrys. Actually, they're the Saints, but formerly the Larrys, to advance to the ECAC women's ice hockey title game against the Cornell Big Red. So, speaking of Central New York, let's quickly set the record straight. Just like the kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, or as I used to remember it, King Philip came over for good soup, there are levels to the divisions of New York. All right, I'm going to try to break this down for you. Kingdom is New York. The state has many parts, just like any state would. The phylum is the city and everything else. The class is upstate, the city, Long Island, 3 very distinct areas of the state. The order is upstate, yes, upstate again, Westchester, the island, and the city. And then you got the family. So we're continuing to break this thing down. Then you got the Nassau, the Suffolk, the 5 boroughs, Capital District, the Adirondacks, Central New York, Western New York, Southern tier. Basically, your Empire State Games tier is the family tier right there. If you know the Empire State Games. If you don't, look it up. And if you're a OG lacrosse guy, you know all about the Empire State Games. And then you got the genus. I can really only speak to upstate here, but you got the different parts of Albany and the Capital District, Central New York, which is basically Little Falls to Rochester, and south to the Finger Lakes and Geneva, and north to Watertown. You've also got like the Finger Lakes region. You've got Western New York and those regions, because you've got Buffalo, the city, up on the lake, and then you got south down towards Salamanca. But that's going to be your genus, and then your species. You got your towns and your rivalries. For example, I'm from the Mohawk Valley, which is a part of Central New York. Bottom line, upstate is Woodstock and everything north. And yeah, Poughkeepsie, you are not upstate, and I won't hear anything else on the topic. All right, kicking it over to to the first quarter. We're going to go to the first week of NNP's top 20. The NNP's first week of the top 20 rankings. Coming in at 20, you got the UMass Minutemen, 19, the Virginia Cavaliers, 18, the UPenn Quakers, 17, the St. Joe's Hawks, 16, the Fairfield Stags, 15, the Georgetown Hoyas, 14, Richmond Spiders, 13, the Colgate Raiders, 12, the Ohio State Buckeyes, 11, the Harvard Crimson, 10, the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays, 9, the Syracuse Orange, 8, the Duke Blue Devils, 7, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, 6, the undefeated Army Black Knights, 5, the Cornell Big Red, 4, the North Carolina Tar Heels, 3, the Penn State Nittany Lions, 2, the Princeton Tigers, and coming in at the number 1 spot, your undefeated Maryland Terps. So you got 2 undefeated teams in the Maryland Terps at 1 and Army at 6. Princeton obviously went down to Tobacco Road and took care of business the prior week and continue to take care of business with their only loss coming to the Terps. Nittany Lions with a huge win over Cornell. Tar Heels had a bye week, but they're continuing to beat teams convincingly with their only loss coming to those Princeton Tigers. Cornell only loss coming to Penn State Nittany Lions, who are ahead of them. Notre Dame at 7, Duke at 8, Syracuse at 9, Hopkins at 10. I had a hard time with Notre Dame. Didn't know really where to put them, coming off back-to-back losses. We'll talk a little bit more about them as we go through 4 quarters here. But Duke 6-1. Now 7-1 after their win over Providence on Wednesday. The Cuse at 5-2 at 9. Hopkins also at 5-2. Crimson, Ohio State. I think the other one that I want to talk about is the Colgate Raiders. I got them at 13. I'm really high on the Raiders. Their style of play is really cool. It's tough to prepare for. The 10-man, the pace of their play. They're gonna be tough. They're gonna be a tough out. I know they've got, I don't know who they have this weekend, but they got Cuse the following week on a Saturday. The following week on a Saturday, so that'll be a great test for them. I don't know who they have this weekend off the top of my head. And the other one, the Fairfield Stags, 3 undefeated teams. The Fairfield Stags, we're gonna talk a little bit about them in low to high. They're 7-0. They are solidly a frisky squad for sure, but should they be higher? I don't think so. The St. Joe's Hawks have been impressive. They could be higher. Tough to put them ahead of an undefeated Fairfield team. And then rounding it out, the UMass Minutemen are a perfect UMass team. So that's the top 20 for this week. Things are starting to shake out. This will change, obviously, but it'll be interesting to see how all these teams continue to jockey for position. Jumping into our second quarter. As I mentioned, we're going to get back to the Fighting Irish, but first, we got to start with where are all the Myers haters at right now. I'll say Coach Myers has coached his tail off in that game in South Bend. I mean, from my perspective, he was coaching in each huddle during each timeout, and as I like to say, getting in his coordinator's kitchens. It's almost like he was coaching with his job on the line. But whatever he did, he got the job done. And I mean, hand up, I was one of those guys that had his seat warmer on, like a cold day in the New England areas. You're turning on your car, but he had his guys humming. They're scoring a ton of goals, led by Alex Mariner at attack. Which is a cool and a funny story, given Alex was recruited to play defense and did so his first 2 years in Columbus. Speaking of D, they're playing good defense, led by Bobby Van Buren being a beast down low. The fellas at Stick Talk had a great saying recently, and I'm going to piggyback it slash steal it. Whoever BVB is guarding, you better put that guy on a milk carton because he's disappearing for those 60 minutes. And then in net for the Buckeyes, you got Caleb Fyock, aka Big Tasty. He's doing more than enough in between the pipes to give this team a chance to win here the last couple weeks. He had 13 saves on Saturday against the Irish. Now, what's wrong with the Fighting Irish? Or is there anything wrong? On one hand, they've lost to two good teams by only a goal apiece. I'm not ready to hit the panic button yet, but they shouldn't be on the pedestal that we all put them on to start the year. They lost two generational type talents. You just don't simply replace guys like Kavanaugh and Entenmann. At the same time, the only opponent that anyone would say is quote unquote on their level that they've played are the Hoyas. And that was only a 2-goal win, albeit away from South Bend. But offensively, they're showing their true colors against top talent. They're only averaging 10 goals in the past 3 games against Georgetown, the Terps, and Ohio State. And during those 3 games, they're averaging 4.3 assists per game compared to the 9.4 assists per game they averaged in 2024. They need Jake Taylor to get going. But for him to get going, he needs Kavanaugh and Faison to get going. He's an off-ball guy. He needs others. And he shows flashes of it at times, but they need him to get going. That assist number's got to come up. I mean, dropping 5 total assists per game is certainly a part of their issues. But to go back to the question, what's wrong with the Irish, or is there anything wrong? I don't think there's anything wrong with the Irish. What I think is wrong is, or was, or were, the expectations about them from the rest of us. We wanted to put them up there like they were the same team coming off of Memorial Day Monday last year, and they're just not. So is there anything wrong with the Irish? No, they'll figure it out. They still play in what I think is the best conference in the country, although the Big Ten is putting up a fight. What's wrong is the expectations we had for them for this season. Jumping into the third quarter here, looking at that Cornell Penn State game. I mean, incredible game, but we're going to pick it up with 2 minutes and 30 seconds left in the fourth quarter. All right. Cornell leads 12-9 with 2.5 left. They're clearing the rock. Goalie turns it over on the clear. They were up 12-8 with 2.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And in possession of it, attempting to clear the rock. Goalie turns it over 12-9. Then on the ensuing faceoff, Cornell's Fogo gets a helmet-to-helmet penalty, 2 minutes locked in. Penn State scores man up 12-10, still locked in. Penn State wins the ensuing draw, score man up 12-11. Ensuing draw, Penn State wins 12-12. Ensuing draw, holding penalty. Penn State holds it and gets the ball in OT. We go to overtime. Penn State wins the draw, 13-12 final. What a collapse. You give up a 4-goal lead with 2.5 minutes left. Woof. And yes, all these things are bad, but the face-off discrepancy in the fourth quarter was the game changer, in my opinion. Face-off numbers in the fourth quarter, 2 wins for Cornell, 9 wins for Penn State. Yes, 1, 2, 3, at least 3, maybe I think 3 draws were man up for Penn State, but still 9-2 in the fourth quarter. And what's crazy to me is that that number is so skewed after being even for all intensive purposes through quarters 1 through 3. Now, looking at the box score for Penn State, freshman Hunter Aquino is putting together a killer campaign. He went 1-4 in Ithaca on Saturday. The dude continues to wreak havoc on defenses. Beyond him, Penn State has some pretty balanced scoring. Defensively for Penn State, they found the formula to beat Cornell, which is obvious in theory, but much harder to execute in real life, which is slow down my Tewaaraton winner, CJ Kirst. And I say slow down because you cannot stop that man. He was still 2-1, but that obviously wasn't enough. They did get 7 total goals from their attack unit, with Kirst's 2, Michael Long's 2, and Goldstein's 3. But what's crazy, just looking at the final score, you'd assume Frassion for Penn State had a good day in net, and you'd be dead wrong. Box score had him for 4 saves. 4 saves. Gave up 12, 4 saves. That's reminiscent of the Holy Cross result against Queens earlier this year, where the Crusaders goalie made 1 save in a winning effort. But hey, a win's a win, and there's no pictures in the box score, that's for damn sure. But looking at the shots on goal, Penn State had 21 to Cornell's 16. I haven't watched the game all that closely, but this could mean 2 things to me, right? Cornell's defense was exposed, or Penn State's defense did a great job, even with their goalie having a tough day. Now, Cornell's defense got exposed because they gave up 13, or Penn State's defense just, they didn't give up a ton of great looks, and Cornell had to force some shots. Now, the ones that are on net went in for the most part, but either way, you still get the 13-12 result, and even with this, the nail in the coffin for Cornell was penalties and man down. Penn State mounted their comeback on 3 EMO goals in the fourth quarter. Now, nonetheless, the Big Ten got to flex its muscles again right in my face because I think the ACC is better, but both these teams are good and will make a push into May for sure. Fourth quarter, Cuse versus Hop. I'm going to keep this one short as we covered some of it in our interview with Coach O'Dearna, and if you haven't listened, get over there and give it a run through. Great interview. The inaugural Nothing Near Post interview, and we really appreciated Cuse's defensive coordinator John O'Dearna jumping on there. But this was a game of runs, and Nothing Near Post was in the building, in the press box. Awesome atmosphere in the dome. 8,600 people, even on spring break, so no students. But this was a game of runs. Cuse had 3 separate runs of 3 straight goals and 1 of 2 goals. Hop had 1 4-goal run and 2 2-goal runs. So the offenses, both sides, found ways to stack goals for each other. The Cuse had a balanced showing offensively with 5 different goal scorers, all with at least 2 tallies. If you scored for the Orange on Sunday, you got at least 2. All right, led by redshirt senior Owen Hiltz's 4-1 day. But for me, one of the leading storyline, I don't know if it's the leading storyline because Hiltzy was 4-1, Joey Spallina was 2-2, but one of the storylines was the role the second line midfield played in the Cuse offense. Led by Tyler Cord's 2-2 effort, including his second that was part of a 3-goal run that allowed Cuse to take a 9-8 lead after being down 8-6. Duh, Silbs, I can do the math. But the second line was also on the field for the 12th goal and the one that put the game out of reach. Which was late in the fourth quarter. Now, all around, great day for the second line guys. Stick taps to Cords, Wyatt Hoddle, Tyler McCarthy, and Peyton Anderson, who all 4 of those guys got burned on that second line. Blue Jays, they were paced by sophomore Charlie Eiler from San Ramon Valley and coming out of the West Coast Stars program. He was 3-1 on 4 shots, I might add. That's a killer shooting percentage day, and I'm not a math guy, but that's 75%. I can do that one. I do want to point out that I don't think Luke Stout's day between the pipes was as bad as the stats indicated. They only gave him 6 saves in the box score. It didn't feel like 6 being at the game. probably mostly because he stole two on the doorstep from Trey Deer alone. But this game was interesting, given neither team was at full strength. The Blue Jays were missing their starting attackman Russell Melendez after he went down with an injury in the first quarter of the UVA game, which gave Charlie Eiler he played quarters 2 through 4 in that UVA game in their win. And then started against the Cuse. And I'll say this about Charlie Eiler. He is quick as a hiccup, man. Great footwork. But Cuse was also down with no Finn Thompson, who appeared to be in a sling on the sidelines. Now, even with these injuries, neither team seemed to miss a beat, scoring 25 goals total, which actually hit the under. Nothing near post was on that one. But Trey Deer stepping in at attack for Thompson, and Charlie Eiler stepping in for the Blue Jays, obviously. Eiler won the matchup of those two replacements, going 3-1. But Deer doesn't have to do more for this team than he's capable of. He's got great dudes around him. He'll continue to get his. I know he will, as a talented lefty goal scorer. But it's nice that as a young cat, he doesn't have to do more for this team. You know, he can fit in where he needs to. Now, he probably wants those two on the doorstep that Stout stole from him, but he'll continue to put himself in positions to score. And they're, 50% of the time they're of the highlight variety. That dude's got a great stick. Fun to watch. In the end, Cuse outpaced the Jays 8-4 in the second half for a 13-10 win in front of that home crowd, as I mentioned, 8,600 people. I predicted it would be more, but I also was unaware that it was spring break. But still, 8,600 people for a lacrosse game is unbelievable. The Dome's an incredible environment, and I will end it with this: there's no place like Dome. All right, so that's it for our 4 quarters. Let's jump into low to high. All right. First off, we're going to talk recruiting regions. All right. Someone in the postgame presser at the Dome on Sunday asked Coach Milliman if it was intentional to have a roster full of upstate guys. And I'm going to go ahead and say that's a dumb question. All right. It's a dumb question. Upstate is obviously a place that has pumped out a ton of talent over the years. Me being an upstate guy, I'm obviously biased, but I'll tell you this right now. The way that upstate's pumping out talent these days is not the way that it was pumping out talent in years past. They're just not. Now, yes, Coach Milliman's an upstate guy. Coach Kester, the defensive coordinator for Hopkins, is an upstate guy. So they definitely have an affinity and a bias for it as well. But they get the best dudes out of upstate. They're certainly not recruiting strictly upstate like Syracuse used to, and Syracuse isn't doing that either. I just don't think the talent pool is there. Quite honestly, I think the top 3 areas right now for recruiting are Long Island, in no particular order, I should say. Long Island, Philly, and Baltimore, with the 4th. I don't know about the 4th. I think the top 3 are Long Island, Philly, and Baltimore in no particular order. I think there's an argument for all of them. And at some point, Nothing Near Post, we'll have a recruiting episode where we dive into it and maybe look at those numbers a little bit more. But I thought it was a dumb question, and maybe I think the guy was writing for the Post Standard or something, so he had to ask the upstate question. But nonetheless, I thought it was a silly question, but that is what it is. The Road Raiders, the men from Hamilton, New York, Colgate University, have not played a single home game yet this year. Crazy. They're 5-2. They're in the top 20, solidly in the top 20. And like I said, I'm high on them. But they've not played a single home game this year, partly by design and partly due to Mother Nature showing her strength in Central New York. And if we pull up their schedule, let's see what they got coming down the pipe. All right. So they're 5-2 overall, 2-0 in the conference. They lost at Penn State, lost at Virginia, won at Albany, won at Harvard, won at Villanova. I know the Villanova game was supposed to be a home game, as was the Albany game. Didn't end up being that way because of Mother Nature. Shout out upstate New York. They won at Loyola convincingly for a league win, and then they won this past weekend at Lafayette. So let's hope the sun is shining in upstate New York. Starts to thaw out the field at Andy Kerr Stadium, because they are set to host Bucknell this weekend, March 15th, for their third league game. So hopefully they can get one in. But I mean, it doesn't get any easier, because right after that, as I mentioned, they're at Syracuse. So out of their out of their first 9 games, they will have one home game. One home game. Now, they finished the year with three home games and 2 away. Those home games being, 4 home games if you include Bucknell, home against Navy, home against Army, and home against Holy Cross. Finished the year at Boston University. But if they continue to score goals and 10-man ride the way that they are, they've got a really good chance to host the quarterfinals of the Patriot League for sure. I'd have a hard time that they're going to catch Army to host the Final Four of the Patriot League, but who knows? But yeah, the Road Raiders, man, shout out to them winning 5 games on the road out of 7. Next item here, Stag Party, an upstate/Canadian tradition unlike any other. For those of you that don't know, Stag Party is not a bachelor party. It's a different party for a bachelor who invites all of his buddies. He gets some donations from either his buddies or others in the community. He sells a bunch of raffle tickets. The fellas get together, have some suds, and they raffle off items. It's a hell of a tradition. But Stag Party in this regard is talking about the Fairfield Stags. They're 7-0. Staring down 8-0 with their game against Hampton this weekend. And then they have a meat of their conference schedule coming, starting with Drexel and Stony Brook. Can they get to 10-0 heading into their game against Hofstra? That's the question. If so, I think they can make it 11-0 before they take a trip to Newark to visit the ass-kicking Chickens, which will be something that we'll have to circle on our calendars for sure. And those ass-kicking Chickens, of course, University of Delaware. Now, speaking of 7-0, right? You'd like to think, oh, they're not playing anybody. Okay, they're not playing anybody. Quickly looking at their schedule. They've got 7 wins over the following. All right. 7 wins over the following: Lehigh, Brown, Sacred Heart, Manhattan, Providence, St. John's, UMass Lowell. Okay, so not the greatest, but Lehigh had a win this past weekend. Brown's coming into their own. Okay. Providence just covered against Duke tonight, and they're doing it. They're doing it, right? And then they go, I hate to do this to the Pirates of Hampton, but they're going to go 8-0. And then they got Drexel and Stony Brook after that. So why am I saying all that? Lax Reference on X put out a graphic with strength of record. Usually a team like Fairfield, who starts the season hot, a lot like America's team last year, doesn't have the strength of schedule that shows up in the algorithms, but the Stags are different, right? Lax Reference had their strength of record as 9th best in the country. So they're doing something down there. They're doing something down there at the beach in Fairfield County, which is cool. And I know a lot of people are tagging them as this year's America's team, right? 7-0, play a fun style, score a bunch of goals, and they've got a free stream for every one of their games, and it's really well produced on YouTube. So shout out to the Stags. Next topic here, what's brewing in Hanover, New Hampshire? Don't look now, but the Big Green are approaching frisky territory. 5-1 with arguably what some would call convincing wins over Bucknell, Holy Cross, Vermont, Siena, and Utah. All 5 of their wins were in convincing fashion. They have one more out of conference game in which they will host my alma mater, the Hobart Statesmen, before they're staring down the barrel at conference play, with the first two being Penn and Princeton in that order. We will see very quickly how frisky they really are in that UPenn game. Next up, you got the Bison Netminders. All right, the Bison Netminders. What we're referring to here, Bucknell and their goalie situation. All right, Bucknell and their goalie situation. Coach Federica has this wild concept where he will substitute goalies in and out like they're attackmen, like they're midfielders. I mean, shoot, in the game this past weekend, he played all four goalies against Boston University. All four. Everybody got a chance. All right. Everybody got a chance. And I'll tell you this right now, as a goaltender myself, that is just brutal from a goalie's mindset. You're always looking over your shoulder thinking, what's Coach Fed thinking? That I don't see that being successful long term, but again, I'm a washed up college coach, but I thought it was crazy playing all four goalies. And even when I was coaching in the Patriot League, he would pull goalies and then put them back in. Now, I didn't watch the Bucknell BU game, but I'm not sure if he pulled a guy, put him back in or not, but all four played. All four played. And I have seen Coach Fed in the past pull a goalie. Next guy gives up one or two, puts the starter back in. Just diabolical behavior, in my opinion, but something to keep an eye on for sure. I had somebody reach out to me in the DMs. And they called out this tactic of playing all four goalies, and they made a reference as they made a reference that I'm not going to share on the air, but it was an OnlyFans reference, and I'll let your mind do the I'll let your mind take that where it needs to go. But everybody got a turn. We'll leave it at that. All right, moving on to the Dogs EMO and Timmy Shanahan. All right, Boston University was 7-9 on extra man against the Bison this past weekend. That is absolutely diabolical. But as offensive coordinator for BU, Mike Salippo always says, quote, "It's not hard, it's just math." And obviously what he's referring to is you're up 6v5. You got to find a 3-on-2, find a 2-on-1. But I mean, nonetheless, not everybody is going 7 for 9. And we'll talk a little bit more about the BU extra man unit here in a second. But the Dogs were, if it's math, the Dogs were up to some abstract algebra on Saturday, going 7 for 9. Speaking of 7 for 9, freshman Timmy Shanahan, he earned Patty League Rookie of the Week after his 4-goal, 5-assist performance against the Bison. And sticking with the EMO theme, he was 1-4 on the extra man. Dishing it out all over the place. Everybody gets a goal when Timmy Shanahan had the ball on his stick on Saturday. Overall, he's leading the Dogs in points with 33 on 17 goals and 16 assists. And for a rookie, that's some killer balance in his game. I mean, and with that kind of production, he's making a hard push for Patty League Rookie of the Year. And we'll have to dive into that as we get closer to the middle of the year here. But next topic here in Low to High, Spartans in the Cigar City, baby. All right, we've already talked about the University of Tampa Spartans once on nothing near post with the People's goalie going down there. But don't look now. Both the men's and the women's UTampa teams are ranked number 1 in the country in Division II. All right, the Spartans are number 1 in both. So they are sparking it up in the Cigar City. All right, next topic here, turning point for the Bulldogs. I don't know. The Yale Bulldogs, they got a win over Denver 15-10. I can't say I'm sold on Denver. Some people are saying that this was the turning point. This was the game that Yale needs. I don't know. Again, I'm not sold on Denver, but if you look at Yale's schedule coming up. Take a quick peek. They're at Harvard this Saturday and then host Cornell and Brown. So those are their next three. So they're right into conference play. They're going to mix in two non-conference games in April, but their next three are really going to tell the story. At Harvard, home against Cornell, home against Brown. Who are the Yale Bulldogs here in 2025? Now I will say one of the polls had them receiving votes. That's insane. They sit at 1-3, one win coming over Denver. And I mean, yeah, they got three losses against good teams in Villanova, Army, and Penn State. Two of those teams in the top six in the Nothing Near Post poll. And Villanova's a good team, but getting votes at 1-3, shame on you. Shame on you. All right. Next topic here in Loda High, and this one, I hate doing it, but I want to talk about it. The Lacrosse Network, TLN, they go by. You look at their Instagram page, and personally, I think it promotes the worst side of this game. The worst side of this game. And I don't want to say much more on it. I just wish they would mix in a little bit of, I don't know, something else. It's very fratty. And this sport has had a hard time becoming mainstream, and the Rabel brothers are doing a great job with the PLL, but with TLN being underneath the PLL umbrella and them putting out a ton of that frat boy stuff, I don't think it's great for the game. I mean, obviously it's a game of clicks, and they're getting clicks, but I just wish they took some responsibility to promote some of the other stuff around this game that's been so great. But that's old man yelling at cloud, but who knows? All right, and then our last piece here for Loda High to wrap up Loda High. The big cat Riley Sullivan. All right, the Lafayette Leopard star. That's why he's the big cat playing for the Pards. Sully is currently sitting at 7.17 points per game, which puts him in the number one spot in the country in that category. Against Bingo, he was 7-3. Against Colgate, he was 5-7, and then he followed up the Colgate output with a 3-7 day against America's former team, NJIT. So stick taps to him. Incredible output. Now, I hate to say this, they are 0-2 in the Patriot League Conference, and those Colgate stats came in a losing effort. But the Pards have the Crusaders coming to town, so looking to get off the schneid. But I will say this, the Crusaders are, and I can say this for the first time since 2021, ahead of the Pards in the Patty League standings. Keep an eye on that. That's all we got there for Loda High. Keep your submissions coming. Let me know if there's stuff you want us to talk about. And to wrap up this episode here, the Nothing Near Post show. We used to call this the segment without a name. Well, we got a name. We're calling it the score sheet. These are the three things that I'm keeping my eye on throughout the year. All right, first and foremost, Syracuse's EMO has hit a speed bump or a rut or something. They might have driven off the road. Talent's there, but their last two outings, they had an 0-for-4 day against Hopkins on Sunday. Last week, they were 1-for-4 against the Salt Lake City, Utah Utes. That puts them at 42% on the year, falling to 26th in the country. Now, kind of cool. Extra Man, definitely a fun part of the game for sure. Top three programs at Extra Man in the country right now. At 3, you've got Boston University at 64.3%. Remember, it ain't hard. It's just math. At number 2, you got the Princeton Tigers at 70%. And at number 1, you've got Marquette at 70.6%. Pretty cool to see. Next item on the score sheet, we're looking at the UVA Wahoo's man down unit. Again, the reason we're looking at this is because this was a huge piece that I thought they had to fix from last year. This weekend, Towson went 3 for 7, but last week they held Hopkins to 0 for 3, which slots them in at 88.5% kill rate on the year, slotting them in at 5th in the country. And the top 3 programs right now in man down, also cool to see. You got the Great Danes of UAlbany, who are perfect on man down on 14 attempts. Second, you've got the Siena Saints at 90.9% against 11 attempts. And you've got the Terps at 3 at 90% on 10 attempts against. And then the last piece of the score sheet here, the Big Ten versus the ACC. The last 2 weeks, big push from the Big Ten. Big push from the Big Ten, shoving it right in my face. You had a Terps win over the Irish. You had a Hopkins win over the Wahoos. You had a Buckeyes win over the Irish. And the lone ACC win over the Big Ten was Cuse over Hopkins, which puts this season's total at Big Ten wins over the ACC 5 and ACC wins over the Big Ten at 4. So we'll continue to track that. But that's all we got for this week's episode of the Nothing Near Post Show. If you haven't yet, again, make sure you go listen to the Coach O'Dearna interview with obviously him being the Syracuse defensive coordinator. We chopped it up about a little bit of everything. But until next time, always remember rule number 1, nothing near post.